There you are. Good morning. Welcome to the garden. I'm glad you all have chosen to get a little bit damp this morning and come join us. I also want to say a special thank you to Bill Johnson, a friend of mine who filled in for me last week while I was off doing a little fun thing and a little time away. So it was good for everybody. So yeah, thank you. I'll be sure and tell him you did that. So there's a quote that's attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "To be great is to be misunderstood." Well, that causes me to wonder what is meant by that, and what do we mean when we use the word greatness? If we describe someone as great, what are we saying about them? To try to figure this out, I actually Googled the phrase "to be great is to be misunderstood" to see if it revealed anything maybe the writer had shared about the intent of that phrase, but no good at all. I really found nothing that was terribly helpful, which meant it left me to my own devices to try to figure it out. And I came down to really two different perspectives we could take on that statement. Perhaps it's talking about if we say a person is great, does that mean that that person is someone who's maybe ahead of his or her time? And to such an extent that we really don't have any capacity to understand and to grasp what it's all about? Or does it have to do with the word greatness itself? Does it mean that we don't really interpret the word greatness as it's really meant to be? We don't have a really clue what greatness is all about. Well, I decided to go the latter route, and so you're going to go along with me this morning because you don't have a choice. So we're going to go that route and think about the word itself, about greatness, and how perhaps we in our part of the world, in this Western culture and in our society, have misinterpreted this whole sense of what greatness is. Sometimes I think we equate greatness with what we think success is, and we think about success in almost a little superficial layer across the top, just the outward things that we see, and we think about, all too often, wealth and fame and fortune and maybe power of one form or another. And yet, to see those things that I would consider to be the trappings, really, that doesn't tell us anything about the person, about what the inner life of that person is like. You know, when we look at all the Bernie Madoffs of the world, for example, we might think that this is someone that some at least might have considered him at one time someone who was a great person because of all those trappings. And yet, as time has proven, he's acquired those things through dishonest and disreputable kinds of means. Sometimes we describe an actor or an actress as great in all the various roles they play. But is that really what we're talking about with greatness? So to keep delving into this whole thing, I went to dictionary.com to see what it had to say. And it said all kinds of things, but it said things like of significant importance, or for a person who's achieved importance or distinction in a field. Well, that wasn't what I was thinking about. And I went to Wikipedia, and it wasn't helpful either. So I went to a real source of wisdom, which was the Bible passage we have for this morning. This is out of Mark's Gospel, and let me give you a little background, and then we'll share the section we're going to focus on a bit. It begins with a story about James and John, the two sons of Zebedee, and they're vying for the place of honor. They go to Jesus and say, "Okay, Jesus, when you're with God, can we have the place of honor, one at the right and one at your left, the best places?" And of course, the other disciples got wind of this, and they weren't very fond of the idea of these two scrambling all over them and headed to the top place. And so they get into a little bit of a debate about the whole thing, and Jesus stops it. And this is what our passage says. "You've observed how godless rulers throw their weight around," he said, "and when people get a little power, how quickly it goes to their heads. It's not going to be that way with you. Whoever wants to be great must become a servant." It's so typical of Jesus to turn everything that the world thinks sort of upside down and say it's not that way at all. It's not the way you really think it is. That's not what really counts. That's not really what really matters. It's not about fame and fortune and wealth and power and all those kinds of things. It's not about that at all. In Jesus' eyes, greatness has to do with humility and service. It's not about trying to be the top dog or we're in it for ourselves. It's about trying to share what we have, to give of ourselves to others. It's giving more to life than we take back from life. So thinking in that way, thinking of greatness that way, how do we know it when we see it? I guess for me, it always shows in the little things, not in these grandiose kinds of things, but in the little things. And I think it begins with integrity. Now, when I use that word integrity, I'm talking about the sense of wholeness, of everything fitting together, that our intentions, our inner intentions, our motives, and our outward actions are in sync. That means that the goodness that's in our hearts and minds and spirits is lived out in all of our words and all of our deeds. Henry Stanley Haskins said this: "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." If, for example, we're following the pattern of James and John, and we're in it just for us, and we're really stepping on anybody we need to step on to get to the top rung, then probably we're lacking in integrity, because our motives are not good. They're not healthy. They're not helpful at all. And that doesn't get us anywhere. Now, sometimes people look at those who are in leadership and say, okay, those people have greatness about them. Well, I don't believe that's true of everyone that's there, but there are some who would emulate greatness for us. Scott Birkin said this: "I think leadership comes from integrity, that you do whatever you ask others to do. I think there are non-obvious ways to lead. Just by providing a good example as a parent, a friend, a neighbor, makes it possible for other people to see better ways to do things. Leadership does not need to be dramatic, fist in the air and trumpets blaring activity." Well, I think being a person of integrity is the starting point. It's the baseline for it all. And then it shows itself in all of those little things that make up our lives as we move along. As Helen Keller said, "I long to accomplish a great and noble task, but it is my chief duty to accomplish small tasks as if they were great and noble." I think she's right. You know, greatness, at least for me, shows a lot in how we treat other people, especially those people who can do nothing in return for our kindness to them, our good to them. Samuel Johnson said, "The true measure of a man," and I would add woman, "is how he treats someone who does him absolutely no good." What that leads me to do is to think about, how are we treating our employees, our co-workers? Are we doing our part, our fair share, more than our share? Are we willing to go the extra mile? Are we offering the best we have, regardless of what anyone else is doing? Are we offering that best and being a good team member, a good team player? Are we treating people always with respect and kindness? I think that goes a long way toward contributing toward someone who would be called great. There are other attributes that would come together as well that we might use to describe greatness. For instance, I think of honesty. We see people who are honest in their dealings, their private lives as well as their public lives, whether that's work or whatever it might be. Honesty is one of those attributes that we admire, I think. What about courage and strength that sometimes people show when they're facing great adversity? Those are marks of greatness as well, I believe. Sometimes we see it when people have expertise, but that's coupled with kindness and a willing to share that expertise with others to benefit other people. And sometimes I think it has to do with being willing to take huge risks to benefit others, even if it's costly to ourselves. I think that all plays together. People whom we consider great are those that we typically respect and admire. They're the people who have influenced us in one way or another. They're our role models, and they're the ones that call us to be our higher selves, that help us take the high road whenever we're faced with any kind of situation. Albert Schweitzer said, "Example is not the main thing in influencing others, it is the only thing." And I can add to you one more thing that would be on my list if I describe someone as great, and that is love. And by that I mean someone who lives a life of love, following the great commandment to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And that to me shows in everything we do, even in the smallest little thing that we do in the course of life. And life is made up of a whole myriad of small things all the time. Mother Teresa said, "We cannot do great things, only small things with great love." Well, in that sense, if we think about it that way, every one of us has the capacity for greatness. Every single one of us. Well, we can't talk about greatness on Father's Day without thinking about the role that parents and other adults play in shaping the lives of our children, because it is important to realize that we're human beings. We do fall short. All of us do that. No one of us is perfect. And yet, if we can think about incorporating some of these attributes of greatness into our lives, like humility, like honesty, like integrity, like love, like fairness, like kindness, if we incorporate those into our lives, I think it will make an incredible difference, the kind of life we live and the impact we have on others without ever really knowing it in the course of living our lives. When I put together a message, once I start one, I never know where it's going because the Spirit kind of gets a hold of it and it winds up someplace different. But this time when I started this message, I thought, aha! I've got the perfect bookends. I've got Ralph Waldo Emerson at the start, and I can put him at the ending. He's got that thing about success that says to laugh often and love much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children. I thought, I got it. That's it. Except I began to look at that and found out that maybe that part is wrongly attributed to Emerson, that the original actually came from someone by the name of Bessie Stanley. And I looked at it, and I looked at Emerson's, and I thought, that's not quite it. So what do? I thought I had the perfect ending. It's not there. Except then something by Edgar Guest appeared for me. It's called What is Success? And as I read through it, I thought, okay, that's it. I'm going to take a little poetic license, so to speak, and replace his word success with our word today, greatness. See if you think it fits. Greatness is being friendly when another needs a friend. It's in the cheery words you speak and in the coins you lend. Greatness is not alone in skill and deeds of daring great. It's in the roses that you plant beside your garden gate. Greatness is in the way you walk the paths of life each day. It's in the little things you do and in the things you say. Greatness is in the glad hello you give your fellow man. It's in the laughter of your home and all the joys you plan. Greatness is not getting rich or rising high to fame. It's not alone in winning goals which all hope to claim. It's in who you are each day through happiness or care. It's in the cheery words you speak and in the smile you wear. Greatness is being big of heart and clean and broad of mind. It's being faithful to your friends and to the stranger, kind. It's in the children whom you love and all they learn from you. Greatness depends on character and everything you do. Well, that's my take on greatness. What do you think?